Hello， 大家好，我是叶子。很久没有聊李光耀先生，没有发和他相关的视频了。最近呢，刚刚从新加坡、台湾旅游回来，我从新加坡带了4本相当重的书，都是关于李光耀的，是我新加坡的好朋友送给我的。我这个人呢，这一辈子读书并不多，就读这种纸质的书并不多啊，因为大量的阅读可能都是在网上呀，或者是通过看一些视频啊，获取一些信息。我并不是一个真正读书的人，但是他的书我是真的有在拜读的。我现在正在读一个美国记者汤姆·普雷特采访李光耀的一本这个交谈录，应该是这样说，让我对李光耀的这个想法、人生有了很多的一些了解。那么今天呢，我是想分享一个关于李光耀的视频。这个视频和他本人并没有上镜啊，他跟他本人有关系，但是他本人并没有出镜，是全球一些政要，各个国家的政要，当年的、现在的等等的，他们对李光耀的一生做出的一些评价。让我们把这个视频先看一下，看完以后我们再聊。
Well, I think Lee Kuan Yew was a great man. I had the great fortune of becoming a personal friend, and we saw each other many, many times. He stayed at my house, and I've often visited Singapore. There was never a month when we weren't talking to each other. So I will miss him, but more important, the world will miss him. Lee Kuan Yew was a very meticulous person, so when you were invited, before I came to Singapore, he'd send me the menu of the meals that he was going to offer me and give me a chance to comment that if I didn't like it, that I could change. And that's never happened to me. That's never happened to me anywhere. But I think what he said, what he seemed to be is what he was. He was committed to Singapore, and he was committed to an international world in which small countries could survive. And he went around the world preaching this and succeeding.
Hello, everybody. I just want to welcome the Minister Mentor of Singapore. This is one of the legendary figures of Asia in the 20th and 21st centuries. He is somebody who helped to trigger the Asian economic miracle. Singapore has been an outstanding friend and ally of the United States for many, many years. And so I am very much looking forward to the opportunity to hearing from the Minister Mentor his views on the evolving situation in Asia as I prepare for my upcoming trip both to Singapore and to other key nations in the region. And so I'm very grateful that he took the time. Welcome. And on behalf of the American people, we want to say thank you to the people of Singapore for being such outstanding friends.
Thank you, Mr. President, for those very warm words.
Tomorrow, Singapore will hold a state funeral for Mr. Lee Kuan Yew. Mr. Lee was a strategist and statesman respected across the world for his outstanding contribution to the peace and development of Asia and the exchanges and cooperation between Asia and the world. I want to take this opportunity to pay high tribute to Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and all those who have made contribution to Asia's peace and development.
His work as Prime Minister and now as Minister Mentor have helped literally millions of people from Singapore and all across Southeast Asia to live better, more prosperous lives.
All of us who work with him have benefited from his wisdom his insight and dedication.
He has become a seminal figure for all of us. As I said, I've known him for 40 years. I would say I've not learned as much from anybody as I have from Lee Kuan Yew.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome the Minister Mentor here today. He is no stranger to our country. Singapore is a long and valued partner on so many important issues. And I think it is fair to say, sir, that you have a great many admirers. You're here to accept an important award that is given for lifetime achievement. And I join in the many Americans who thank you for your service.
Thank you very much, Secretary of State. I've come at a very important moment in America. It's a time for renewal and resumption of the engagement of America, in particular with Southeast Asia and East Asia. It is the part of the world that will alter the shape of the 21st century.
So we have our work cut out for us, sir. Thank you. When did you arrive?
He's a one-man world intelligence agency.
A man of total rectitude, high intelligence, and one of the great leaders that I have met.
He is an outstanding character, very difficult to put into a prefabricated category. He is somebody singular.
He's one of the leaders I admire most in the world. He was one of the finest leaders of the 20th century.
How are you, Mr. President? Happy to meet you.
Good to see you again.
You look splendid.
Prime Minister Lee and Mrs. Lee, honored guests who are here tonight, Nancy and I welcome you to the White House. It was a great pleasure for me today to renew a valued friendship with Prime Minister Lee. I first met the Prime Minister on a trip that I took on behest of President Nixon. And when we stopped in Singapore, I was amazed at the dynamic society that I found there. How could a country with such a small area and few resources be making such strides? And then I met Prime Minister Lee, and my questions were answered. He is a man of principle and vision. His leadership has provided the vigorous and creative people of Singapore the means to move ahead, to achieve, and to build. Singapore's experience has been in stark contrast to developing countries where political power has been derived from terror and brute force. Instead, Prime Minister Lee's authority has rested on his capacity to mold the opinion of his countrymen and build consensus. He has used his position to free the talents and energy of his people so they could be channeled into constructive society-building activity. Fortunately, Prime Minister Lee's sound judgment does not stop at the water's edge. American leaders, including this one, have frequently benefited from his wise counsel. Our meetings today were no less beneficial. Our exchange was cordial, reflecting a mutuality of interests and a harmony of views. Mr. Prime Minister, I want to express my personal admiration for your recognition of the contributions America makes to world peace. As the world's most powerful democracy, our people carry a heavy military and diplomatic burden, an often thankless task. But you have demonstrated an appreciation and understanding that makes it all worthwhile. This spirit of mutual respect was evidenced in our meetings today. None of this should be reason for surprise. Our two peoples may at first glance seem worlds apart, both in geographic location and culture. But a closer look reveals that Singapore and the United States are nations made up of hard-working immigrants and their descendants who came to a new homeland to improve their lot and build a decent life for their families. We're both democratic nations, committed to peace and to the preservation of human liberty. And these bonds are being bolstered by continued cultural and educational exchanges, and of course, the many commercial ties between our peoples.
I would always gladly come here to see the work you are doing, to see the success you are creating, and always to have a talk with the Prime Minister of Singapore, who shares my beliefs.
There was no leader you admired more than the late Singapore leader, Lee Kuan Yew. Tell about the dinner that you had at your house.
Well, it was with him, and I had Paul Volcker, who Federal Reserve Chairman, and then I had Bob Rubin, who was the Treasury Secretary. And so we were around the table, and we went around and asked him what, who were the best leaders, who were the worst leaders, what was the complexion of the existing leaders, and so we got all of his thoughts. And very interesting man, because Singapore's, this little city that is kind of a mosquito-infested swamp that had nothing particularly special other than he created a culture and a way of operating there that made Singapore what it is today. So that was what the dinner explored.
What was his reasoning for saying Vladimir Putin was one of the best leaders worldwide?
He said that you have to evaluate a leader within the context of his circumstances. And so if you go into Putin and the situation when he took over the Soviet Union, which was Russia at the time, because the Soviet Union had fallen apart, and there's corruption, and there's anarchy, literal anarchy, and they're broke. And Boris Yeltsin, who preceded him, was an alcoholic, and there was no government, and there was no bureaucracy. And he described how he came in, and he had to deal with all of that to create order. And he spoke about the accomplishments, to stabilize it, to raise the incomes, to establish the institutions that they didn't have before, those kinds of things.
这个视频里面出现的人呢，都是大人物，美国总统、国务卿、英国女王撒切尔夫人，就等等等等，这些都是全世界各个重要国家的政要高官，他们对李光耀做出了一些非常非常中肯的评价。你看，特别是一上来那个基辛格都说他跟李光耀真的是一辈子的好朋友。他们可能真的没有哪一个月是没有聊天的。我没有想到，就是这帮政要之间，他们有他们自己的圈子嘛，他们也是朋友嘛，他们之间也会这样，就是一直不停的保持联系，真的像朋友一样，我是没有想到的。所以很客观的反映出李先生在国际上的地位。虽然新加坡是这么小的一个地方，而且新加坡的地缘政治真的是非常的特殊，周围被几个大的穆斯林国家所围绕着，对吧？而且新加坡自己本身跟马来西亚的关系，对吧？当年被怎么说弃婴，新加坡在李光耀强力手腕，这个 Ironman 这个钢铁人的这个带领下，能走到今天，从一个海港渔村走到今天，哇，真的是太不容易了。我觉得李先生的这个手腕，他的策略等等等，他的一些远观的一些东西，真的是太有智慧了。就打一个简单的比方，前两天我刚刚看了一个 BBC 拍的一个纪录片，讲的是在西班牙的一些人口拐卖的一些事情，对吧？就是关于女性被拐卖以后去做一些非法的这个皮肉生意的事情。新加坡是亚洲唯一一个在色情业是合法的国家。当年李光耀就说过，这个行业是无法灭除的，你就算政府不给，它也会有，因为这是人性无法抹灭的一块。 他作为一个对犯法看得非常重，新加坡法律很严格的一个制定者，他居然能够对这个网开一面，因为他是知道他这一块他收不住，与其收不住，那不如政府统一起来管理，这样反而更加的容易让不管是工作者还是去消费的人都会有一些保护保障。所以你说这个政策新加坡就非常的左，有很多人说新加坡独裁，新加坡非常的这个没有人权的，但是在这一点上你怎么解释？只有一些欧洲或者是一些西方非常非常开放、非常非常人权自由度非常高的国家才会有这样的政策出来。加拿大对这一块的政策非常的有意思，大家可以，我卖个关子先不说，大家可以去查一查，然后评论区我们可以聊一聊。那么今天分享了李光耀这段视频，我也希望大家在评论区告诉我你们对李光耀是怎么样一个看法。如果你是新加坡人，用你新加坡百姓的眼光告诉我；如果你是世界上任何一个国家的华人，用你的声音，你对他的认知，你对新加坡的了解告诉我。如果你是一个说英语的人，或者是常年在国外长大的，以英语为母语的，问一问你周围的朋友，他们对李光耀这个人又是怎么看的。我觉得李光耀当年可能是新加坡在全世界范围内最有名的一个公众人物了，可以这样说。所以对他我并不想加以过多的个人评价因素，因为他确实对于我而言太伟岸，我不想评出一些失格的话，对吧？我对他只有敬仰，没有什么负面的影响。包括我之前拍过他取消华语学校，全部走英文这些政策，包括他决定要走简体字等等这些政策，我都觉得现在回过头来看当年他的这些政策，那真的是，而且我的评论区里面也能证明这一点。很多老网友，看我视频的老网友都知道，在那几期视频里面的评论区，大多数新加坡人现在回过头来想一想，虽然那个时候很困难，从华校突然到了英文学校很不适应，但是现在看看他们的孩子，他们的后代，新加坡现在在国际上的地位能够跟国际接轨，为什么？这都是和这些政策是分不开的。所以有些时候事情发生的时候，我们作为当事者迷，但是一个好的领导人会慢慢的带领我们走出这个谜团。好吧，今天我就说这么多，大家在评论区我们继续的聊，继续的说。Thank you very much。如果你喜欢我的视频，希望你多多点赞分享，这样可以增加 YouTube 推荐我视频的权重。不论你赞同或不赞同我的观点，都欢迎你在评论区留言，留下你的足迹。如果觉得我的频道有点意思，就请订个阅关个注，下回更新不迷路。